I appreciate your allowing me to digress. I just didn't want to not have the panelists answer this question. What's very telling, though, is that even though there are like, two sides to this issue, are you, for council action or opposed to council action, once you go beyond that, you really start to see a lot of differences in opinions about how to address the whole issue of term limits. Very fascinating. So, Lou, thank you for allowing me to digress.
Did I have a choice?
Now you've got your 5 minutes.
Okay. When you sit here listening to so many learned people speak before you, you have to avoid the pitfalls of repeating, and yet I do have so many things that I disagree with that have been said. And I want to start off with my friend Gene Rushinoff, who said this is the most important issue in the city of New York today. And quite frankly, while it is clearly an important political issue, I think if you were losing your job, if your 401k was cut in half, when you see what this financial crisis that we are facing is going to do to the city and state budget, I think you might want to rephrase that question, because that is in fact the burden that we all in government and in the private sector are going to have to deal with, because frankly it is, Dow Jones yesterday notwithstanding, it is going to be awful, and that is the most important issue facing a government in this country today, not just in the city of New York. I guess, for those of you who follow the New York City Council playbook, you would know that I have been, and am kind of proud to be, one of the most vigorous critics of Mike Bloomberg. I take great pride in the fact that in the last election, I was the first non-Latino elected official in the city of New York to support Freddie Ferrer, and I'm still proud of that. I have opposed policies of this mayor on repeated occasions, and I've done so pretty loudly, and I'm very proud of the fact that when the mayor and I appeared last in my district together, the mayor of the city of New York said, when Lew Fidler's on the other side, he can be quite irritating. I wear that as a badge of honor. For me, this is not about Mike Bloomberg. I have found the process by which this question has come to before the public to have been rather distasteful. I have to say that. I don't really give a damn what Ron Lauder has to say. He is not my representative. I never voted for him. I don't expect to ever vote for Ron Lauder. I haven't voted for Mike Bloomberg either, and quite frankly, I hope the other side gets Tom Golisano so everyone can have their own billionaire, and I won't care what any of them have to say. The fact of the matter is, I am also not going to allow the fact that the billionaires have gotten together and conspired in some kind of way to put this question before the city of New York to let me say I am not going to vote for a position that I have held for my entire life. I was against term limits in the 1990s. I was against term limits before I got elected. My constituents know that. I was against term limits when I sat down with the Citizens Union in my first re-election, and I was against term limits when I sat on this dais, in this room, as a candidate for Speaker of the City Council, and I am not going to let the fact that Mike Bloomberg and Ron Lauder have brought this before the public in a way that I find to be personally distasteful stop me from voting for what I think the proper policy is. And any of us who have been involved in city government know that the New York City Charter gives 90% of the power in this city to the executive branch. The legislative term limit disembowels this city council in so many ways. And let's start with the fact that if we do not change this law, that for the rest of our life, the Speaker of the City Council, who is supposed to be the leader of the counterbalance to the mayor of the city of New York, will either be a freshman or a lame duck on the day he or she is elected. That's bad government. That's bad government. The point was raised before about the permanent government in the city of New York. We are all elected with an expertise in something, but none of us are elected with an expertise in everything. But you know what? We're asked to vote on everything. And so when we are first walking in the door, we're being led around the nose by bureaucrats, by lobbyists, and by staff. Because we all know that the people who frame the agenda and provide the facts are also answering the questions. And that is what happens with term limits, especially short term limits like 8 years. The permanent government, the people that you don't know, well, maybe the people in this room do, most people don't know, will never vote for or against, they're in charge. And that's bad government. And I'm not going to vote for that. When I came before the Citizens Union and I was asked about term limits, I said, the problem isn't so much the class going in as the class going out. And, it is unrealistic for people to expect that, someone who runs for the city council or any elected office is going to interrupt their life for 8 years and then just go back to the farm. It doesn't work that way. All right? We are, this is not poli-sci 101. This is the real world. It's not fair to expect someone to interrupt their life for 8 years without at least giving them the possibility of continuing. And so what happens is I have been surrounded by colleagues who are all desperate to find the next rung in the ladder. So they did 4 years, every one of them having to run after the first 2 years, raise money, seek out the very lobbyists we are seeking not to empower, right? And then immediately start to worry about how they're going to keep the parking permit. And the fact of the matter is, that's bad government too. There are too many people who are on the city council now who are too concerned about what their next political move is going to be, and that's something else that term limits do. Now, I just want to briefly respond to a couple of the points that former Deputy Mayor Mastro raised on the law, and obviously judges are going to come to this question no matter what the council does. At some point, the Conflict of Interest Board will have to rule as well. I mean, it is interesting to note that Mr. Mastro is representing clients who did not feel that it was a conflict of interest for the city council to vote on pay raises that affected us, but yet on this issue where political interests have shifted, they see conflicts. I honestly think that a full understanding of the conflict of interest law will show that this is absolutely permissible and it is not a conflict of interest, and Mr. Mastro will have his opportunity to make that argument to the board, and I believe it's going to be rejected. As far as appellate courts being divided, I suppose if the Court of Appeals had agreed with them, Mr. Mastro would be making that point. But the Court of Appeals of the state of New York was on the other side of this question, which is why the fact that appellate judges differed was irrelevant. And we all understand as attorneys that there's the Court of Appeals that counts. And as far as knowing about any backroom deals, I mean, that comment, I got to tell you, I don't believe everything I read in the paper because I read stuff about myself in the paper that I know is just not true. But I certainly don't believe items that I read on page 6 of the Post. And as I said to a reporter from the Post today, if it was a real story, they would have given it to you, not to the guy who's going to tell me, whether or not Britney Spears is wearing underwear today. So, the legal issues will hack out. And I just want to say this. There's politics on both sides of this question. And, let's not all be shocked about that. This is a political issue. And I can draw a straight line of people's political interest on both sides to their position, and it would be obvious to you, no matter where we stand on this, there's politics going on. That doesn't mean that we can't dismiss the politics of the billionaires that have brought this to us in such a distasteful way and do what is best for government. And that is what I'm going to do, and that is my position.
Thank you very much, Lou.